Good afternoon, Mr. Tabler. I know these are very odd circumstances where we have to meet via face to face. I mean, not face to face, via computer technology. So I've got to ask you some questions on kind of where your life is going and how you're handling it right now. I heard that you were getting ready to retire and leave your church after 20 years, correct?
That is correct. I have been pastoring here at Wesley Chapel for 22 years, bivocational. I have been in the ministry for 40 years. And now it's just time in the ministry to kind of sit back and to refocus my life.
All right, and right now you are married, correct?
That is correct. I am married and I have 5 kids and more grandchildren than I can count.
Oh my. Do you have a good support system? Are you pretty close with your kids and grandchildren?
Absolutely. I have a daughter that lives in Las Vegas, and she probably calls me 5 times a week. I have other children that are scattered abroad the state of Georgia that has always supported me and a very big part of my ministry.
All right, so would you say you are excited for this next transition of your life?
Oh, absolutely. I'm not looking at retirement as the end of life. I'm looking at retirement as the beginning of life and entering a bunch of new adventures in life that I has never yet taken.
All right, and how old are you, Mr. Tabler, if you don't mind me asking?
I am 62 years of age.
62 years of age. So, based upon your chronological age, you are entering into what we call the later lives of adulthood and coming on to the senior years, which is
That is correct.
retirement and all of that. Is that something? Is that emotionally disturbing to you, or how do you feel like emotionally? How do you feel about this entering these stages?
I'm looking forward to it. I'd say at a point in my life that I have told my wife, I said, realistically, I may have 20 years of life left, be 82. It gives us 15 years of life. I'm hoping that we have together, that we can do everything in life that we haven't done and fulfill our bucket list, and we can travel and just enjoy each other and make it the best part of our life.
Now, physically, have you developed any changes coming onto this period in your life? Do you feel like you're having to deal with disabilities now that you've never had to deal with before?
Well, one of the several reasons why I'm leaving the ministry is number one, as I have begun to get older, I have begun to lose my sense of hearing. I have since then have got hearing aids, and that has helped, but I still have a hard time hearing people in large crowds, and so sometimes that is quite embarrassing when people are talking to you and you can't really hear what they're saying. And then another thing, a reason I'm leaving is the older I get, have a very hard time focusing on people with adult ADD.
Mm-hmm.
I have been on Adderall to help me to focus, but the side effects, I really didn't like it, and so I have tried generic drugs like focusing and to use that to help me to focus and to help me to listen to people.
Do you feel these medications have helped you?
Oh, absolutely. They've helped, but with every time you take a medication, there's always a side effect to every medication. And so that's the
Absolutely.
reason I have gone to natural medicines rather than the Adderall and the drugs.
Is it depressing to you to have to rely on medications to live day to day now?
No, it's just a way of life. Just like a diabetic would have to take medicine for diabetes, a person with high blood pressure has to take medicine to control his blood pressure. And I'm just looking at that focusing that I take as a medicine to help me to focus and to pay attention to people.
Excellent. Now, you told me you had a bucket list. So, what kind of things are you wanting to accomplish in your
My
retirement?
bucket list is my wife and I. We want to do a lot of traveling together. You know, we got a lot of cruises to go together. We want to go to Alaska. We want to go back to Hawaii. You know, we like to spend more time in Nevada with my one daughter, and you know, just things of that nature.
Excuse me. So, do you feel like you'll be spending more time at home once you are retired, or with all this traveling, you plan on being out and about and just enjoying life, correct?
Uh, until my wife turns 65 and is able to retire, we will stick around here. That would be probably about 7 years. But after she retires at 65, I will be 68, and then we hope to spend a lot more time just visiting without having to worry about you know, jobs and other things of that nature.
And you know, amidst this coronavirus outbreak, I do have to ask you, do you feel like that may be an issue with you traveling one day? Because they say people in their 60s and older are the most at risk to some of these viruses and issues going on.
Well, I'm just a person that believe you can't live your life in fear. You live your life in fear, you're going to miss about all the opportunities that are out there. I just believe in using, you know, plain common sense. I believe in, you know, keeping your hands clean, keeping your space, keeping your distance, do everything that you can to protect yourself, but don't allow the coronavirus or any other epic pandemic, you know, to control your life.
Yes, sir. Do you feel yourself being more depressed going into this stage of life, or more just excited and looking forward to it?
No, this is something I've been really contemplating for about the last 2 years of my life. I thought about retiring last year at the age of 61, but my daughter in Nevada said, "Dad, you need to stick it out for one more year." She said, "Think about it. You retire at the age of 61. That means you spent 39 years in the ministry and you're retiring at 61. That don't make any sense, Dad." She said, "Why don't you spend one more year and retire after 40 years in the ministry and at 62?" And so I took my daughter's advice and stuck it out for one more year. And probably with the coronavirus and everything that has transpired this year, it probably was a very wise decision for me to put off my retirement for one year. For me personally, and probably a good thing for the church as well.
And I must ask you, with the coronavirus going on right now, I hear that, well, at least my church here at home, we are not meeting every Sunday. Has this been an issue for you? Do you feel like your Congress members and you, not Congress, your, I'm sorry, your community, your members of your church, have they felt any mental issues because of this isolation? Has this been an issue for you or your church members?
I think all in all, everybody has handled it quite well. Living in a small community, we're not impacted by the coronavirus as people in New York or California are impacted in it. Living in Greene County, as of today, we have only had 14 cases of coronavirus, zero deaths. And so, you know, everybody is living on the side of, you know, precaution, doing everything wisely, and you know, so that's what we have done here at the church. We have not had services for the last 4 weeks. What we have done is we have took our services, went online to Wesley Chapel Live every Sunday morning at 11 o'clock. And so at 11 o'clock, when, instead of coming to church, I have encouraged all church members to join us on Facebook. And the services ran on Facebook just like it would be in the regular morning worship service. We put on our music and our prayer requests, our tithes and offering, giving people an opportunity to give online. And the morning's message is just the same message that I would preach as if everybody was there within the service itself. One thing that we have done this year is, we're living in perilous times, and this is the first time in 22 years at Wesley Chapel we're not having a sunrise service, we're not having an Easter egg hunt, we're not uh, having our Easter services, our Palm Sunday services, as far as being live participation. And so, in a way, for some people, it's very depressing. But one thing I try to help people to understand that the church is more than a building. That the church is about a body of believers, and that we can all worship the Lord, via iPhone, via computer on Easter Sunday as we can, as well as being in the sanctuary.
Yes, sir. All right, sorry, I kind of veered us off subject just because of the recent events going on, but I'm curious to know, through your life, as you have lived more life than I have, what would you say has been the highlight of your life as far as the developmental stages you have gone through? I know when you were 21, you were just entering young adult phase, and then you went on to getting married and having children, I'm sure, around that time, and then you entered into, midlife issues, and now you're looking towards retirement and the end of your life cycle. So what has been the most, you think, just exciting time in your life for you? If you could look back and say, what has been the most
Oh,
impactful to you?
that's a good question. I look at life as the best is yet to come. And I'm excited as I'm looking into retirement because I've never been there before and I don't know what to expect, but I believe it's the best to come. Financially, it's the best that I have ever been before, and so growing up with 5 kids in the house and living on a pastor's area, it was very hard. It was very difficult, and now it's just my wife and I, and I'm just really looking forward to this stage of our lives.
Do you have any challenges going into this stage of your life? Minus, I know what's going on now with the coronavirus. Do you think you could think of as far as they could be mental or physical challenges for you?
Probably, the greatest challenge before me is to, overcome any obstacles that lies out there any day. Every day is a new challenge. Every day there's a new problem. Every day there's a new opportunity. As we grow older, our challenges in life change. I mean, just like the older I get, I find out it's not as easy to bend over and tie my shoes as it was when I was 20.
Mm-hmm.
The older I get, I realize, you know what? When I get out of the chair, I just don't jump up anymore. It's a little bit harder. And there's a lot of things in life that I used to do that I realize, you know what? I can't do them anymore because of the age factor. And so that's probably the greatest challenge in life is realizing the fact that there are new limitations in my life, things that I can't do that I once was able to do.
And how do you cope with those, with the reality that you can't do what you used to do? Is it just like you just take it as it is? Or are there certain, do you and your wife, is she your venting partner? Is she the person who you can vent your frustrations to? Or is this something you just kind of keep in your own heart?
It's just one of the things I just keep reminding myself, Tim. You're not as young as you used to be anymore, and you have to accept it. And you have to go on. There's no sense of worrying about it. There's no sense of fretting about it. Reality is reality. You know what? I have to hire people to do things that I used to be able to do. Like I'm having a new roof put on my house. 20 years ago I would have done it myself. And so,
Mm-hmm.
it's things like that. You just realize where your limitation lies.
And I know as a pastor, I'm sure you've preached a lot of funerals and your friends are aging, I'm sure, along with you. How has, what are your coping mechanisms with preaching funerals and seeing people die? How do you handle this?
Now, that's one of the hardest things about being in the ministry because I get too personally involved in people's lives. And every time I bury one of my contemporaries, it becomes harder and harder. And that probably has played a big factor and my retirement, because I'm just tired of facing death on a large scale. Um, it's just very, 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 very hard. I mean, I understand that everything I preach is true, and everything I preach, I believe, and that one day I'm going to see him again. But it's very hard to lay that loved one to rest that have been part of your ministry for over 22 years.
I can't imagine. Now, is your wife, I guess she's a little bit younger than you since you said she's not retiring for a few years. Now, is she having to deal with new disabilities too? Is this something you're having to work with her? Maybe helping her more at home or get things accomplished?
My wife has some physical disability. She has diabetes. She got, I think, called spinal stenosis, and the narrowing of the spinal cord. And one of the things that we do around the house is the fact that we work together. We just do what needs to be done. It's not his chores or our chores. I get home from work before she does, and I'll make supper. She gets home before me, she'll make supper. She has been a very big part of my ministry for 40 years. She has, led music for 40 years. She has taught Sunday school classes for 40 years. She has done whatever I have asked her to do, and she has been a very big supporter. And now we both are at that place in life. You know what? We just need to turn the ministry over to someone younger and enjoy this new stage of our lives.
Well, that sounds fabulous. I know for me personally, my husband and I are only 35 years old, and through the physical challenges I've had up until this point, I know in 30 years when I'm looking towards retirement and being in my 60s, I'm going to have a lot of physical challenges facing me that I don't have now that, it kind of worries me. So what kind of advice would you give to someone like me who in 30 years we're thinking, where are we going to be and how are we going to handle it?
Seize the day. Whatever the day is, don't take it for granted because you don't know what tomorrow will hold. And so that's my words of encouragement is live every day to the fullest and get to the place in life. And when we get to the end of life, we can look back and say, you know what? I don't have any regrets. If I had it to do all over again, I would do the same thing.
Oh, well, thank you.
That's the way I try to live my life.
I think that's a great piece of advice for anyone at any stage of life. All right, Mr. Taylor, thank you so much for your time and meeting with me today, and I wish you the best of luck with your services and your future retirement that's coming.
Thank you, Miss Tate,
Miss Wood.
Ann Woods.
Yes, sir. All right, thank you so much.
All right, bye.
Bye.